The results from the poll I put up yesterday asking what's the best video game with an open world came in, and the results are very interesting. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
There's lots of fun stuff to get into, but first let me get this out of the way. A big reminder, the podcast is now officially on iTunes, so please subscribe there. You can easily find it by typing in Super Dario World Podcast in the iTunes Store search bar. You could also rate the show there. That would be extremely helpful. It really helps with the rankings. So far, still 5 stars, so thank you very much for everybody who's supporting this channel. However, if you don't like iTunes, you can still find it on SoundCloud and YouTube. Still not on the iHeartRadio app yet. I'll update you on that pretty soon. As always, please add me on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Dario the Show. You can always contact me there with any comments, questions, or suggestions. The segment today is pretty much all based on the comments I got from the poll I put up yesterday on Instagram. So I take your comments and feedback very seriously, and I appreciate that you take time out of your day and reach out. So thank you again. But okay,
Let's game.
so for those of you who don't know or who missed the podcast yesterday, I put out the question of what's the best open world video game to play because I want to actually sink my teeth into a game. I usually don't. I own a ton of fucking video games that I haven't played because I know if they're open world, I know that I'm just going to get distracted by great side missions and I'm never going to finish the story. This has happened before. And so I've been avoiding open world games for a while. Open world action RPGs, I've been avoiding them. I buy them because I want to play them, but for some reason I just keep avoiding them. And okay, no, I know the reason. It's because I'm an idiot. I don't know why, but it's just like, okay, I'll play it eventually. And so now I have 100 hours of gameplay just sitting there. And then I get another one, so it's now 200 hours of gameplay. And then I get another one, it's 300. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and out of hand. And it just makes me think, you know what, I'll just save it for later. I'll save it for later. And so basically I procrastinate. And I just end up playing something else, something that's simple, something that's quick. I played a ton of Smash Brothers Ultimate because of it, because it's simple and quick. I finished the whole story, which was amazing. I loved it. And then you can just play with your friends. You can play online. So games that have a beginning and an end, a clear beginning and a clear end, I've always preferred those because there's such a thing as having too many options, too many things to do. And I'm a completionist, so I like to do everything. So if you keep giving me side missions, if you keep giving me quests, I will keep taking them. And 100 hours of gameplay turn into 200 hours of gameplay. So, and also, not only am I a completionist, I'm a perfectionist. So if there's a possibility that I can do a mission perfectly, I will try to do it perfectly, like without getting hit, without getting anything. So, I mean, that happens a lot in strategy games where I set up a strategy and it doesn't fall perfectly, so I go back and do it again. It's like, no, this is going to land perfectly. I'm not going to lose a single one of my soldiers in this battle. So I might be a tad obsessive, and that's why I know that about myself. I'm very obsessive about certain things, but I also love a good story. So I tend to pick games, or recently I've picked games that have a clear story with a beginning and an end. That way I can have my life back after I'm done. I don't mind spending 100 hours in a game, but I'd prefer having my life back in, because some games you can keep investing in. That's the issue I had with Skyrim. I just went back and started all over because I wanted to try something else. When you have too many options, I tend to try out each and every single one. That's why I've replayed Pokemon Fire Red. I can't tell you how many times, because once I want to try this team out. Oh, now I want to try this team out. Now I want to try this starter. Now certain rules. Now only fire types. Now only water types. Now only Pokemon that don't evolve. So yeah, I have issues with certain games, but I know this about myself, so I avoid it. Lately, and by lately I mean the last few years, I've bought a ton of great open world games that I have not touched. Every single thing I've heard about these games are fantastic. Every single thing I looked up, and some of them I even tested out a little, they're fantastic. They're amazing. They're the best of the best. But I've avoided playing them just because I know that it's a huge commitment of time. And I'm going to fall behind on all the other things that I like all the TV shows that I watch, movies. I'm going to fall behind on everything because, again, I'm obsessive. If I'm in there, I am in there. Sometimes I don't even sleep. I have issues, okay? I know this about myself, so I tend to avoid it. So, since I have all those games, they're just collecting dust, and I know they're great, I put out the question of what's the best open world action RPG. I asked just open world because that's the thing that they have in common, but that's pretty much what I was asking. What's the best open world RPG? Because if I'm going to invest the next 100, 200 hours of my life to something, I want it to be to the best one, and then I'll just go down from there. I want to get the spark going again, you know? So, put out the question, I put out the poll on my Instagram, and I got the results, and I will share them with you now. And just to clarify, on this list is only the games that I own but haven't played yet. Okay, so I own them, but I haven't played them. Because I also have Zelda, The Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda, The Breath of the Wild, which I think so far is the best video game I played in my life of its genre. And so, but I already finished it. I can't tell you how many hours I put into that game. I loved it so much. It was perfect from beginning to end. So that's why it wasn't on this list. I think it would have won out easily if I would have put it there, but I don't know, because for some reason people don't put the Switch on the same caliber as the PS4 or PC or Xbox One. But whatever, doesn't really matter. Also, this poll is based only on the people who I have on Instagram. So the results of it should not be considered universal or whatever. It's just based off of the small sample of the people who follow me on Instagram and who actually took the time to give me their answers. So, okay. I'm going to go in order here from the one that got the least amount of votes to the one that got the most votes. And I'll break down the game a little bit for each one so that you kind of have context of what I'm talking about. So let's start with the bottom of the barrel. So at the bottom of the list with 0 votes, 0% of the votes, we have Kingdom Come Deliverance. I think this ended up falling in as number 11. And I was sad by this. I was actually excited to play this game because it is supposed to be extremely realistic and extremely brutal. So you play a peasant, the son of a blacksmith in medieval Bohemia, which I believe is at the north of current-day Austria. Anyway, so you play the son of a blacksmith who gets thrust into a civil war after the death of his parents and an attack on his village. And the thing that makes this game different is that you're a nobody. You know, usually some games that you play the trope of the chosen one or the hero. No, here you're just a nobody trying to survive. And the game is so realistic that even your character's body odor matters. So let's say, for example, you haven't showered in a few days and you're meeting a noble. The noble will not listen to you. Or, again, you have body odor, you haven't showered, and you're trying to be sneaky, they'll smell you. So it's very interesting. The amount of detail they put into this game is extremely impressive. They thought about a lot of things, and they made it as difficult as they could because life in medieval times was extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. Anything can kill you, and this game follows that. You can die of dysentery, you can die of exposure, you can die of anything. And also, the biggest dangers aren't just soldiers on the war. It's other characters there. You can interact with pretty much anybody, and anybody could shank you for a piece of bread because they're starving. So it's a shame it didn't get any votes because I've heard it's a great game, but extremely difficult, and I guess that can throw some people off. And also, it came out with a lot of bugs. I've heard they've been fixed now. So that's actually one of the reasons why I did not play it when I originally got it. It's because I heard it had a lot of bugs. So sometimes I buy a game and I just wait for it to get fixed because for some reason developers are releasing games that are not finished, and I fucking hate that. Imagine you go to a restaurant and your food comes out and it's not fully cooked yet, or you don't get your potatoes. You get your piece of meat, but you don't get the potatoes. You have to pay extra for the potatoes that come out later. What the fuck? I went there, I paid for the full meal, I paid for the full game, give me the full fucking game. Jesus Christ, I don't care if I have to wait a little bit longer. Give me the whole thing. That's one of the things that I don't like about this industry. But like I said, this one is really difficult. It requires a lot of time and effort for you to get good, as Dark Souls players would say. So I'll play it eventually. I'll let you know how it is. But let's move on to number 10. This is where they actually started getting votes. Okay, so number 10 with 1% of the vote. This one was a write-in. I've already played this game, but a few people voted for it, so I have to include it in the list, I guess. And the game is Grand Theft Auto 5. The third best-selling video game of all time. And it's different from the other Grand Theft Autos because I believe for the first time, this game has 3 main protagonists. You can switch out between all 3 of them to go through the entire story. The world is huge. This one takes place in San Andreas again, which it's a fictional town. It's a fictional state based on Southern California. And the game is huge, and it's awesome because you can pretty much commit any single crime you want. It's great. You can rob banks. You can rob cars, as the title suggests. You can rob people, you can get a hooker, you can kill a hooker and get your money back. So the game has a lot of options, okay? If you haven't played any of the Grand Theft Autos before, I highly recommend you do. I'm not going to get too deep into this one. I'm going to move on to the next one because, again, this wasn't on my list. So if you like destruction and mayhem and crime, highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Let's move on to number 9. So coming in at number 9 with 3% of the vote, we have Dragon Age Inquisition. And I was shocked that this one did not get more votes because this won several Game of the Year awards. It is the 3rd game in the Dragon Age franchise, and the story is that you play as an Inquisitor. That's a player character. He's an Inquisitor who's trying to close a breach in the sky that's unleashing dangerous demons upon the world. That's pretty much the story. So what caught my eye from this game is that it's developed by BioWare. And for those of you who don't know, those are the guys who created Mass Effect, one of my favorite franchises of all time, and one of the best interactive storytelling video games of all time. Well, franchise, because it goes up to 3 games. Anyway, I've heard that this is the best game that BioWare has ever made. I heard that the first 2 Dragon Ages had some flaws, but one was really good at one thing, the other one was really good at another, and in this one, they kind of brought them together. Again, I haven't played it yet. I didn't play the other Dragon Ages, but I've heard nothing but great things about it, and that it's a lot like playing Mass Effect, except that instead of being in space with a lot of technology, you're in medieval times with magic. So the game gets a lot of praise for the voice acting and for the story all around. Also, that the game mechanics, the gameplay, the fighting is supposed to be where the game shines the most. So I'm looking forward to it, but yeah, it landed all the way down to number 9 with only 3% of the vote. So let's move on to number 8. Now, here we have Monster Hunter World, the game that I talked about yesterday that actually started me wanting to do this poll. And this is an interesting franchise because I don't know how it became Capcom's highest-selling game of all time because it's kind of a niche franchise, or at least it used to be. Apparently, this one's a little bit more accessible for people who've never played the game before. And the proof is in the sales, so I guess I can't really argue about that. I've had a coworker, not Eddie, but I've had a coworker who's recommended that I play this game for years. He says it's probably the game that he spent the most amount of hours playing because there's so much you can do. There's so many monsters you can hunt. There's so many gear you can collect, you can craft. So it's a really, really rich world. There's seamless online cooperation, which means that you can play with your friends and develop your own guild, or also use NPC players. Those are non-player characters. And the point of the game is right in the title. You hunt monsters, which everybody says is extremely fun because you have to track them down. You have to find the best strategy for them. You have to level up. You have to be capable of tracking each monster down because each monster has its own level of difficulty. It has its own, challenges. So I'm a big story guy. The most important things for me in a video game is the story. It has to have a good story. But every single person I've asked, well, what's the game about? They say it doesn't matter. You hunt monsters. That's the most important thing. So apparently the story's good, but it's nothing compared to the mechanics of hunting monsters. So I've heard nothing but great things of this game, and it's now Capcom's highest-selling game for a reason. So looking forward to that one. And let's move on to number 7. Here we have Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, with 4% of the vote. So this one was also shocking because this is a huge franchise. And I played the other ones. I love the story. I love the Metal Gear story. And let me see if I can give you a quick summary for it. In the original Metal Gear, you play as Snake. So Solid Snake, that's why it's called Metal Gear Solid. And so you play as that guy who is the clone of the greatest soldier of his time, who's called the Big Boss, and who was getting older So they made clones of him to keep on fighting because they're so useful. Anyway, you end up fighting against the other clones because some of them are jealous because a few of them got recessive genes, others didn't. Some of them just want to do a lot of bad things. Anyway, they created a machine called the Metal Gear, which is dumbed down. It's a tank that can shoot nukes. So it's a very large machine that can cause a lot of destruction, I guess would be the easiest way to say it. And Metal Gear Solid 5 is a prequel game, actually. You get to play as Big Boss, the supposedly greatest soldier of all time. So I know it's ridiculous. I know it doesn't make sense, but I love it. Hideo Kojima, that's the creator of the franchise, is a genius. He created amazing characters and amazing world. It's all super campy. It's extremely campy, but I love it. And supposedly this is the best one out of the whole franchise. And from what I've heard, this is the game that has the best gameplay in the whole list, because you have the ability of dealing with the game in any way you want. For starters, this is, I think, the only stealth action open world game in here or anywhere. So there's probably others, but not as big as this one. And you have the option of, do you want to deal with your enemies in a non-lethal fashion? Do you want to kill them indiscriminately? Do you want to just shoot them up? Do you want to set traps? You can do pretty much whatever you want and use your tactic of choice. So you have a lot of freedoms. You really feel like you're in control of the game, of the character, of your options. The enemies slowly start to adapt to your tactics. You have a dog, you have a horse. The weather plays a factor because sometimes it affects your hearing. It affects visibility. So many things factor into this game. And you have the freedom to choose how you want to deal with everything. So, again, I've heard nothing but great things about this game. It has, 160 hours of gameplay. So the only knock I've heard on it is, well, obviously the story's kind of campy, the characters are kind of campy, but if you're into that, you're fine. But the only knock I've heard of it is that it's not finished. Like, the story doesn't feel finished, and that's because Hideo Kojima left the company before the game was ended, so I think they just kind of wrapped it up and went home. So, kind of like the Aeneid, if any of you have ever read that. So, that's the only knock on it, but otherwise, I've heard nothing but great things. So, again, looking forward to that one. And let's move on to number 6. Here we have Horizon Zero Dawn with 7% of the vote. So, I mean, it got a little bit of love. And the world here is very interesting because it's a world that's dominated by machines, but are kind of like dinosaur machines. So they're kind of wild animals. And humans have devolved into primitive tribal societies who hunt these animals. So they hunt humans and humans hunt them back so that they can take the power course from them. So we get energy from the animal robots, but also get hunted by the carnivore ones. So it's a very, very interesting premise. It's supposed to be visually amazing. Breathtaking is how they describe it. The only issue that this game had is that it came out right next to Legend of Zelda: The Breath of the Wild, which, like I said before, may be the greatest game I've ever played. So that's why it probably did not get the attention it deserved. It got massively overshadowed. I mean, they were sitting in the dark side of the moon. They had no chance. No chance. It was just like in that episode from How I Met Your Mother, where, for those of you who watched it, two of the main characters, Ted and Barney, they were hitting on these girls in a bar, and they had all their attention. Everything was going great. They almost sealed the deal, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, two players from the World Series winning Yankees walk into the bar in New York. So everybody and their mother runs towards them, even the girls who they were hitting on. So they got caught blocked by Yankees. Same thing happened to Horizon Zero Dawn. It was in the bar, it was doing good, it was on the process of sealing the deal, and out of nowhere, in walks Legend of Zelda, knocks it on the side of his head, and just takes everybody out of the bar, and they keep partying somewhere else. So, they got clobbered. It was bad. It was really bad timing for their release. However, it is considered one of the most original titles to come out in a very long time, so I'm looking forward to that one as well. And before we move on to number 5, let's do a quick recap of the first 6. So, number 11, we had Kingdom Come Deliverance. Number 10, Grand Theft Auto 5. Number 9, Dragon Age Inquisition. Number 8, Monster Hunter World. Number 7, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. And number 6, Horizon Zero Dawn. Let's move on to number 5. Here we have Days Gone, which is the newest game on this list. It came out less than 2 weeks ago, and it got 8% of the vote. So I was stunned. I did not expect it to get so many votes because it's so new. And the story of this game takes place approximately 2 years after the zombie apocalypse takes place. And you play as a drifter / bounty hunter who rides in his motorcycle on the broken road, fighting to survive and trying to find a reason to live. So there's a lot of elements from The Last of Us here. For those of you who haven't played that game, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Can't wait for Last of Us 2. But anyway, it has a lot of elements of that story, which I love, but in an open world setting. So I can't wait to see what they've done, because an open world with zombies is something that I don't think I've ever played before. It means that no matter where you go or what is happening, you're always under the threat of a zombie. And these are runners. These are not the walkers, so the runners are terrifying. Plus, you have to worry about other survivors robbing you or killing you, or worse. I don't know if they do yet. I haven't played the game. But it got a lot of love from the people who voted on this poll. Some of them saying that the gameplay is amazing. They knocked down a few points because the story's kind of weak. But in an open world survival game, I don't see that being that big of a deal. But the gameplay was so good that it earned their vote. And like I said, it's only been out 2 weeks, so a lot of love for a very new game. But anyway, let's move on to number 4. Here we have our second write-in of the day with 10% of the vote, Skyrim, The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. So, for those of you who attacked me for not putting this game as an option, the reason why I didn't do it is because A, I've already played it. I haven't finished it, but I've already played it. And B, because I only put games on the current generation of consoles. Now, I know that Skyrim came out for the Xbox One, okay? But it originally came out for the 360. And yes, I did buy it for the Xbox One as well because it had all the mods, and I enjoyed the mods. I can't tell you how many fucking times I bought that game. I almost bought it for the Switch because it's so much fun. It's great. You're the Dragonborn. You're walking around. You're the Dovahking. You slay fucking dragons. It's great. By the way, the story is basically you're in a region of the Kingdom of Tamriel called Skyrim, which is basically the north, so it's where kind of Vikings are. And the Kingdom of Tamriel is under the control of basically elves. And so there's a civil war going on between the people who says like, oh no, we should be faithful to the kingdom, and rebels saying that no, we should be just independent because screw those guys because those guys are under the control of the elves. And in the middle of all of this, out of nowhere, dragons return into the world. So your character is the Dragonborn, a character that has the innate ability to speak the dragon's language and use their powers and absorb their souls. That's the dumbed down way of explaining it. So the story is great. I love it. I love the game. It was a lot of fun. My only issue with it is that you never really finish the game because there's a point where you become too powerful. There's too many options. There's too many side quests, and you get lost in the side quest and you forget the main story. And by the time you decide, I'll go back to the main story, you realize, holy shit, I'm way too powerful for this. You're walking around with your fucking diedric armor and with your freaking demonic weapons, swatting dragons like nothing, like they were flies. Like, do you remember the first time you were attacked by a dragon? You were like terrified because, holy shit, I got attacked by a dragon. There's a point where they become a nuisance. Like, oh, just another fucking dragon that I have to kill with one shot. It's really annoying. Also, there's unlimited choices for your character path, and I don't like that. Specialize in something. Go stealth. Go warrior. Become a mage. Pick one. Pick two. But all of them, it makes your character too OP. You're too overpowered. It's not fun anymore. Now, there are choices that affect the story, which are fine. I like those. You have to make decisions, important decisions. But your character can just become anything? No, I don't like that. You become way too powerful and kind of fast. So that's my issue with it, and that's why I've never finished it. But it's still an amazing game, and I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, let's move on to number 3. Now, this one was stunning. I did not expect this one to fall all the way to number 3. Oh, ironically, we got The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt here with 11% of the vote. And it's shocking because a lot of the people who were voting for this game made the comment that this is the best game I've ever played. And the year it came out, I think it won Game of the Year pretty much everywhere for everything. And the story is that of Geralt of Rivia, a witcher, aka monster bounty hunter, that travels the world and helps people with supernatural things, because the world is overrun by monsters, and the forces that keep them at bay are witchers. but there are very few of them now, and they're not really well looked at by society. Anyway, he gets contracted to find an old apprentice of his and basically save the world. That's the gist of it. And I actually played this game. It's a really good game. The world feels alive. Now, I didn't get very far because when I got the game, there was a promotion where if you bought a new Xbox, you get a free game and remote or something. It was a really good deal. It was when the Xbox sales weren't that great. So I had just bought my Xbox. So I went back, returned it, and bought another one where I got a free game and a free controller. So it required starting the game all over, and one of the games that I got for free I really wanted to play, so I kind of just got distracted with that because I knew that The Witcher was going to take so long that I went for the other one, and I just never came back to it. But like I said, the world feels alive. It feels like it's actually a living, breathing world. The side quests, some of the side quests were better the entirety of other games that I played, and it's a difficult game. It has its level of challenge. It's not perfect, but that's part of the charm, because the world is not perfect. The world is kind of messed up, where monsters are openly attacking people. There's civil war, there's unrest. Things are going really, really badly. What they need the most in the world is a Witcher. And people treat you like shit, like a second-class citizen. I don't know why, but it sucks because you have your character and you know how powerful you are, and you're like, I could just snap your neck right fucking now, you little shit. But as you're trotting around on your horse, people insult you. It's a really, really good game. I highly recommend it. And it dropped all the way to number 3. I'm surprised it didn't get more love. Anyway, all right, let's move on to number 2. Here we have Fallout 4 with 13% of the vote. And again, this was a shocker. I was shocked that Fallout 4 went so high because what I've heard from most people is that it's not even the best Fallout game out there. The consensus is that the best Fallout game is New Vegas. But anyway, it got 13% of the vote. And the story is about a post-nuclear apocalyptic world where, again, there was nuclear fallout, and your character, who is referred to as the sole survivor, you emerge from a fallout shelter, which is the nuclear shelter, after being in cryogenic stasis, and you witness the murder of your spouse and the kidnapping of your son, so you venture out into the Commonwealth, into the world, the post-nuclear apocalyptic world, and you try to find your missing child. That's pretty much it. So from what I've gathered, the overall consensus is that this is a very immersive game. The world is really good. You can explore, you can get in deep, you actually get invested in the world, and that the gameplay is really fun, especially the combat gameplay. This is a shooter, so it's a lot of fun. It's got great shooting. The only problem is that the story is not as good, or that overall it's the worst story of all the Fallout games. So pro and con there. Honestly, this is one of the games that I was least excited about because I haven't played all the other Fallouts, but people really supported it, so it had to move up on the list. Anyway, let's move on to number 1. So coming in number 1 with an overwhelming 40% of the vote, we have Red Dead Redemption 2. And for any of you who ever watched South Park, this should not be a surprise. The last season of South Park is actually one big joke about how addictive this game can be. I loved it. But I haven't played it yet. I played the first Red Dead Redemption. I loved it. You actually feel like a cowboy. I love the world. This is a Rockstar game. It's the same company that made GTA. So you can do anything you want in a Western. So you can go hunting, you can play cards, you can have a duel at sunset. So here's a little bit of the story. I'm going to read the whole story because it's number 1, so I'm going to read the whole story of the game. And here it goes. America, 1899. The end of the Wild West era has begun. After a robbery goes badly wrong in the western town of Blackwater, Arthur Morgan and the Vanderlyn gang are forced to flee. With federal agents and the best bounty hunters in the nation massing on their heels, the gang must rob, steal, and fight their way across the rugged heartland of America in order to survive. As deepening internal divisions threaten to tear the gang apart, Arthur must make a choice between his own ideals and the loyalty to the gang who raised him. Done. So that's the story. And the overall consensus for this game is that it's visually beautiful. Eddie told me that it looks almost like a freaking movie. So it actually looks like you're watching a movie. So the visual is amazing. The gameplay is pretty much the same thing as the first one. They add a few things here and there, but the first one was so great and it was so much fun. So it was like a more polished version of the original. The story and the story missions are supposedly fantastic, really high stakes, deadly. desperate, thrilling, and extremely entertaining. The characters are supposedly fantastic, among the best that Rockstar's ever created. So I think the only knock I've really heard on it is that, again, it wasn't really that big of a change in the mechanics from Red Dead Redemption 1. But, again, that's not a bad thing. Also, the other knock is that sometimes at one point you kind of figure out a pattern for the missions, but that depends on how deep you get into the game and how many of the same type of missions you keep playing, I guess. But anyway, that was the list. That was the results of the poll I put out yesterday on my Instagram of what's the best open world game out there from the ones that I hadn't played. If you have an issue with the results, blame yourselves, okay? This was all you guys. You're the ones who voted. I just merely put my opinion afterwards to let people know what the game was about. That is it. This is all you. You voted. I put it on my Instagram. You had the option to vote. It was all in your hands. The good thing is that now I know which game to play, so I'm going to start with Red Dead 2. So if anybody wonders where I'm going to be for the next 300 hours, I'll be in the Wild West. Anyway, that's it for today. Like I said, hopefully you like the list. As always, add me on social media, at Dario the Show. I'm going to be doing more polls. This seemed kind of fun. It was an interesting experience. Or let me know what you think. Did you hate it? Was it fun? I don't know. I'll think about it. I'll see. If you guys liked it, I'll keep doing more, because I thought it was really interesting. The information I got was really interesting. And for tomorrow, it's TBT. And Detective Pikachu comes out on Friday, so I will be doing something Pokemon related. I haven't made up my mind yet because there's too many options, but something Pokemon related will come tomorrow. Might even do a poll on it. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.